This is the Ramana Maharshi Self-Knowledge Satsang, a time for self-reflection and self-inquiry. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I have been blessed with years of deep teaching. I bring this to you with this satsang. The background image today is Arunachala from the Inner Path. Carol and I walked this path many times, and I'm going to show you some pictures to give you an idea of what that is like. This is the path from Ramanashram up the hill. And after a bit, then we get to the sign that is where you turn left to follow the inner path. If you go straight, you go up the hill to Skandinashram. Then we take the path around the hill, and this is the first view of Arunachala from the inner path. There is a tree plantation on the side of the mountain called the Magic Mountain, and this is or Medicine Mountain rather, and this is Arunachala from their grounds. This is a little further, a nice view of the mountain. And then we go on a path through some trees and then proceed along. And on the horizon there are the hills at the end of Arunachala, and the one to the left is Parvati Hill. So you look and you see Shiva and Parvati. The path in places is covered and sheltered by trees. And sometimes you will see sadhus meditating. This sadhu is on a big rock called Leopard Rock. Then we come to Kata Shiva Tank, and at this place many sadhus come, and this is where they're able to take their daily bath. Then as we go along, there's a place where there is a shrine in the mountain that was put up by the villagers. At this place, the villagers say you can sometimes hear Shiva's footprints. And this is the path at the end of Parvati Hill as it goes around the hill. And sometimes you'll encounter bullocks and cows on the path. They won't bother you, or they never bothered us anyway. And then on the north side, the prominent feature is the one that you see here in this photograph. It's called the elephant, and I think you can see the head and the trunk of the elephant. And this is kind of underneath the elephant and further along the path. And then nearing the end of the path, there's a section where there are many trees planted. They're planted in neat rows like you see in this picture. And above the trees is the elephant again from the other side. Then here is the mountain once more. And towards the end of the path around the mountain, there is this temple, Pachaman coil, with these colorful figurines that are there. And then there's this path down the hill. We ended up ending our walk when we came to the end of the path and stopped at the Ramakrishna Hotel for Indian coffee. Now, glad you could see a tour of the inner path, and now we will go on and continue with Who Am I? And we now are on paragraph 26. And here are Ramana's words. As long as subtle tendencies continue to inhere in the mind, it is necessary to carry on the inquiry, who am I? As and when thoughts occur, they should one and all be annihilated then and there at their very place of origin by the method of inquiry in quest for the self. Now, gross tendencies are related to the I am the body notion. Subtle tendencies are at the level of thought and misidentification with various bundles of thoughts like emotions and moods. Ramana instructs the seeker that as long as the seeker's identity is with anything other than the self, then the seeker needs to keep the inquiry going. As long as you can inquire, then inquire. When you stand as the self, then no more inquiry is possible. The stick of inquiry is finally burnt in the fire of consciousness. Ramana tells the seeker what to do with thoughts, one thought, any thoughts, to stop the thought when noticed and stop it not by some act of control, but rather with inquiry. For whom is this thought is the classic form of this inquiry. The answer, obviously, is for me. You can then ask again, who am I? And this inquiry turns the attention of the seeker from the thought back to the self. With this, the thought just fades away. Now to our videos for the week. The first is
Higher than that, deeper than
talking about
that, is
Atma
the subject of
Vichara.
self-inquiry, which we are going to talk about. How is it different from the other two? Here, it is not a question of belief. You are not being asked to believe that you are Brahman or the absolute reality. No, no, no. You must not believe, in fact. You must know for yourself. You're not even asked to go in through certain exercises and get certain mystical experiences. In Samadhi, you will realize this. Not even that. Those are welcome. Remember, I am not criticizing belief. I am not criticizing mystical experiences. They are all true. They are all helpful. And indeed, in practical spiritual life, you must have those also. But I'm trying to distinguish what today's subject from those things. We must drill down. We must be precise in our thinking today. So I'm trying to exclude those things from the purview of today's subject. At the end, if you have questions, if you ask, so should we not believe in God? Should we not do our meditation exercises and all? My answer always will be, yes, you must. Not only are they good, they are very useful in spiritual life, but they are not the core of the path I'm going to talk about today. How do you distinguish? So what is this unique path if it's not belief, if it's not mystical experience? What is it? The beauty, the unique beauty of Advaita, Vedanta is, it tells you it's not a question of belief. It's a matter of experiencing reality right now as it is. It is not even a question of mystical experiences, seeing some light or some kind of vision, not even that. Just the experiences which are continuously available to all of us all the time. That this world which you are seeing, I am the seer and I see these things. That's enough to begin the investigation. I exist. That's enough to begin the investigation. Ramana Maharshi, famously, somebody asked him, am I qualified? Because we always think the path of knowledge is very difficult. It's not for us. No. They asked Ramana Maharshi, am I qualified for this path? And Ramana Maharshi said, did you say I? Then you're qualified. If you can say I, then you're qualified. Because Ramana Maharshi's famous method was, who am I? If you say I, you can ask, who am I? Self. If you have a self, and obviously you have, everybody has it, then you can inquire into the self. The very existence, our own existence and what we experience around ourselves is sufficient to begin the process of self-inquiry. It does not ask for anything more than that. It is based entirely upon your experience. See, the problem with mystical experience is, though the promise is you can experience it for yourself, as Vivekananda said, but there's a fine print. It takes all these difficult psychophysical exercises over decades of time to have these extraordinary mystical experiences. Until that time, it's still a matter of faith. That other people have it, I believe, I have trust, so I'll try it. But Vedanta promises right here, right now. It's not a matter of believing something, not a matter of trying to get certain extraordinary experiences. So that's the beauty of this path. What is the spiritual journey here? It is not a journey in space, that you have to go from here to heaven, from here to Vaikuntha or Ramakrishna Loka, some divine, the pure land of the Buddha. No, you're not going from one place to another. That reality which Vedanta talks about, the self-reality, is right here, right now. You don't have to wait for it. After death, I will see God. Or after samadhi, after certain spiritual practices, then I will find God. No, the then, when you use the then, you are talking about time. But in this path, there is no then. Right now. Right here, right now, and all the time. And everywhere, wherever you are, it is there. That reality is there. Whenever you are, whatever the time, past, present, and future, that reality is available to us. And here you are not looking for something other than yourself. It is the self itself that is the subject of our inquiry. You are always available to yourself. If nothing else is available to you, you are always available to yourself. If a temple or a meditation hall is not available, but you are there. If all the textbooks of religion and philosophy are not available, you are there. If I am old and sick, I cannot sit up straight and meditate, but my own self is there. Maybe old and sick, self is there. If I'm lying in a hospital bed, self is there. So the self, what the object of investigation here is the subject itself, is the self, and that's always available. So it's not a journey in space, not a journey in time. Spiritual journey in this path is not a journey from self to the other. It is the self itself. Now the problem is, if it is not a journey in time, space, or from one object to another, then if it's a journey, what kind of journey is it? Why do we not know it right now? If it is right now, why don't I see it? If it is right here, why don't I experience it? If I am that reality you're talking about, which I'm looking for, why don't I feel that way? It doesn't seem to be so. So the problem here is ignorance. I don't know it. And the solution is knowledge. So the spiritual journey in this path is a journey from ignorance to knowledge. Not from one place to another. Not from one time to another. not from myself to some God. No, it is a journey from not knowing to knowing. Immediately people will ask this question, a valid question. Is knowing enough? I have heard many talks, read many books, so I know, but I don't think that I'm enlightened or I'm a Buddha. Knowing here has a special sense, not just listening to a talk or reading the book. This knowledge is essential. What we gain from this talk or the book is essential, but that deepens into an enlightenment. So you're already in the process. There's a very interesting thing. Well, if you're learning meditation or if you're on the path of bhakti, devotion, hearing talks and reading books is just a step. But ultimately you have to do it. If I read a manual on meditation, bestseller on meditation, Miracle of Mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh, and I don't practice it, then I gain nothing from it. I have not even started. Reading the book itself is not a beginning. You have to start practicing mindfulness. But in Advaita Vedanta, now, right now, when you get this knowledge, when you listen to it, you've already started. 3 steps, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. I hear, I reflect upon it, and I meditate upon it. So once you've started hearing, once you've started studying, the process of self-inquiry has already started. So congratulations, you're already on the path. You think that I have to listen to this, then I have to practice. So why doesn't he get on with it? No, we are already practicing just by listening here. Atma vichara, inquiry into the self. Ignorance to knowledge. The claim is that we do not know ourselves as we are. We think we have to know things outside. There's nothing to know about us. But Vedanta says you're making a profound mistake. What you think, what we think that we know about ourselves, that is the biggest stumbling block. That hides the ultimate truth from us. Mark Twain once said, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you think you know, but you don't know. That's what gets you into trouble. We think we know ourselves. We don't. And that's why we get into the trouble called samsara. So what is this inquiry into oneself? The inquiry is, who am I or what am I? And the obvious answer is, why? This. There's nothing to know more than this. You see, here I am, this body, this mind. When you investigate this body, when we investigate this mind, the inquiry, it shows us very clearly we are mistaken. We are actually not this body. We are actually not this mind. Though the body is there and the mind is there, we are not it. And our real nature right now is startlingly different, is extraordinarily different from this body and mind. So let's see this process a little bit. And then I would like to interact with you. I'm actually going to point out the real self, Atman or Brahman, whatever you call it in Advaita Vedanta. We're going to point it out right now and see if it makes sense to you. And see especially if you can catch it right now, if you can sense the reality within yourself, within ourselves right now. I mean, the words I'm using within quotes because you cannot directly do that. Not the body, not the mind. Why? Notice that the body changes continuously. It's a fact. Babyhood, childhood, teenage, youth, middle age, old age, how much this body has changed. Hardly recognizable. We ourselves, if we were not told, group photo 40 years ago, and we might not even recognize ourselves, the body there in that photograph. And yet we have the sense that I was that baby, I was the child, I was the teenager, I was that young person, middle-aged person. Now I am here, this old person. That which is changing continuously, and this sense of unchanging identity throughout. The changing and the unchanging cannot be the same thing. In Vedanta, this is called savikara nirvikara. That which is savikara, with change, with modification. And that which is nirvikara, the sense of personal identity, this awareness of the changing body. That awareness has not changed. The two cannot be the same. Between the changing and the unchanging, there can be no relationship. One sadhu said, Nitya और अनित्य में कोई संबंध नहीं होता है. अगर लगता है तो वो भ्रम है. Very, very important precept. If you think about it, very deep and stunning. Between the eternal and the non-eternal, there can be no relationship. And yet, if you find a relationship, that's an error, Brahma. How devastating it is. Non-eternal, father, mother, they come and go. They are there, and one day they grow old and die. Husband, wife, children, colleagues, friends, community, they come and go, non-eternal. And says, yeah, I know that. But what we don't know is, if they are non-eternal, you, the eternal self, you actually have no relation with them. We think we are so closely attached. My dearest and nearest, husband, wife, children. If there was a time when they were not there, know it for sure there will be a time when they will not be there. And even deeper, if that is so, that there was a time they were not there in your life, and there will be a time when they will not be there in your life, in that case, even now when they are there, you have no relation with them. Now, I'm not being cruel. I'm not saying you should abandon your children and divorce your spouse. No. This is in a deep philosophical sense. Actually, in a most profound sense, you are not connected to them. You are not tied to them. If you are tied to something, when it goes, it will pull you along with it. If you are tied to something, when it moves, it will pull you along with it. If you're tied to a person, I'm so much attached. When that person goes away, you should also go along with it. You'll be pulled around. It does not happen. People come and go and disappear in our lives. We don't come with them. We don't go with them. In that case, when they are there also, there's no deep connection, attachment with them. It just seems like that. Brahm hai. Nothing wrong with it. As long as you know it seems like that, you'll be free of that. You'll be free of that attachment. And you can do all your family, professional work can go on. There's no problem at all. But you will enjoy the benefit of freedom in the midst of all of this. Between the eternal and non-eternal, there can be no relationship. Between the changing and the unchanging, there can be no relationship. You, the unchanging awareness, and the continuously changing body, you have no relation. You are not only not one with the body, you are not the body. It is not even connected to you. It is not even connected to you. Same goes for the mind. The mind changes so much from morning till now, just now. How many times happy, how many times miserable, how many times alert, how many times bored, how many times sleepy after a cup of coffee, how awake and alert, how many times curious, angry, irritated, happy, pleased. How much the mind is changing within these few hours after waking up from the last night's sleep. Throughout the life, imagine how fast and how much the mind changes. But you are the same one who saw the happy mind, who saw the miserable mind, who saw the bored mind, who saw the curious and interested mind, who sees the fresh and alert mind, who sees the dull mind. If you see all of these things, then you are not the mind. If you have seen all of them, then all these things have come and gone. You are the seer of the mind. You are unchanging, nirvikara, and the mind is changing, savikara. Between the nirvikara and savikara, between nitya and anitya, there can be no relationship. It seems to be my mind, the closest thing in the world, the closest thing in the universe is my mind. I think I am the mind. No, not only are you not the mind, you have no relation with the mind also. Well, what a tremendous statement. And if you think that way, you will first of all feel a great relief. And where will the relief be? Not in the consciousness. Relief will be in the mind. Mind itself will be very happy to get rid of you. All the trouble the mind undergoes is because we embrace the mind as ourselves. So the mind itself is not me, not even related to me. I am aware of it, no doubt of it. Because I am nirvikara, mind is savikara.
And next is Rupert Spira. And these tendencies that we're talking about are like habits. And Rupert is saying the mind is a habit.
I don't understand how one can have realize one's true self, and then find after a while that somehow the self starts to arise again, or belief in a separate self can remain, even when it's been pretty. You've seen it, you've seen everything.
Yes.
And you know, and yet in challenge, it's easy in a congenial atmosphere with people who may have similar philosophy, or whatever you want to call it. But when it's in a challenging environment, especially a more intellectual one, or a different philosophy, even if it's related, I don't understand why that it's not lost, it's there, but there can be so much clouding over of separation.
Yes. It's quite simple. It's because the mind is a habit. The mind has been rehearsing the belief and feeling in separation for decades. Day in, it was educated to think and feel on behalf of the separate self by our culture. And then for decades, day in, day out, rehearsed being a separate self. Surprise, surprise, that's what the mind does, because that's what it's been trained to do. Then, when it becomes clear to us that what we are is not a separate, limited awareness, the mind doesn't just overnight turn around and start serving the true self of awareness. It's got this momentum running. The analogy that's sometimes given is, you imagine a steamer on the ocean. It's one thing to turn the engine off, but it takes time for the steamer to come to a standstill. Now, if you have a little motorboat and a steamer both going along, and you turn the engines off at the same time, the motorboat will come to rest relatively quickly. The steamer goes on for 30 miles. And that's although both engines were turned off at the same time, but depending on the momentum behind them, they come to rest at different times. So body minds are like these different boats. There is a certain momentum behind each body mind. How long each body mind takes to become acclimatized to this understanding varies greatly from body mind to body mind. The same realization can take place in two body minds. One will go on acting out the neuroses of the separate self for far longer than the other, depending on the conditioning.
I think I knew that intellectually, but I find it very hard to deal with because it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Okay, so that's fine. Just, you mean the separate self doesn't make sense anymore? Yes, you're right. It's once it's been truly seen through, it doesn't make any sense either to act and relate on behalf of a separate self, or indeed to relate to a separate self in somebody else. You want to relate to who they truly are, even if they are acting like a separate self and doing all the usual defense mechanisms and games that egos play with each other. You don't want to play that game anymore. You want to relate to who they truly are. So just and as you say, it's easy in congenial circumstances when everything is going your way, and like now, it's one reason why these kind of events are provided. It's easy. We don't have to give our attention to anyone or anything else. It's relatively easy to know ourselves as this ever-present, unlimited awareness. Then when we go outside, as soon as we step outside, something happens, and then we go to work or back to our families or whatever it is, it gets more and more difficult. But it's just a matter of taking this understanding gradually out into your life. and seeing in time that less and less situations or events or people have the ability to pull you out of this understanding. So you can just experiment in your life. You can just raise the bar slowly. See that, you walk from here to a cafe in Notting Hill for lunch. It's a little bit more demanding than just sitting peacefully here amongst friends, but see then if something can really make you be something other than this presence. And then you just try it in more and more difficult circumstances, and you'll actually see you never, even when thoughts and feelings think otherwise, we never truly become anything other than this unlimited awareness. Just try it in...
I think I went straight into the lion's den, actually.
Yeah. Don't go straight in. Ease yourself in slowly. Just try the situations that are just slightly difficult. Leave intimate relationships till last. Or family situations. Those are the ones that dredge up the oldest, deepest feelings of separation and anxiety and being unlovable or unworthy. All these things. Just 24 hours with your family. A couple of minutes with your family. So try situations that are not so intense. I mean, it's not always the case, but in general, families and intimate relationships have a way of bringing up, revealing that all the old residues of separation in us. Sooner or later they come up in intimate relationships and families, and then work situations again. But so try it in just slightly testing circumstances, but just establish in your experience, not intellectually, but in your experience, that nothing truly ever makes you be or become anything other than this ever-present, unlimited openness. Until you find in the end nothing can truly take you out of it.
And now we have Nome saying it's a question of identity.
You are the self, and to steadily abide in self-knowledge, or self-realization as we call it, you have only to abandon the misidentification with the falsely assumed existence as an ego entity. You have only to abandon the false supposition that you are in some way defined by or connected to a mind, the senses, prana, the body. Such misidentification alone gives the false appearance of being bound, and consequently is the seed for any kind of suffering. When we feel like as if we are bound, then we wisely seek liberation. Yet the liberation we seek is our own nature. It is not true that the self, which is Brahman, is one kind of self, and you yourself are another kind of self. There is only one self. So to utterly eliminate the possibility of misidentification, in other words, in order to utterly destroy ignorance and its consequent bondage and suffering, the Maharshi gives the instruction that you should inquire as to who you are. Because if you deeply inquire, who am I, within yourself, the entire notion, the perspective of being an individual, an experiencer, caught up in whatever, thoroughly dissolves. Hearing the truth about the self, if you approach it as if it were the self and yourself as another, you have to find out then what the nature of this yourself is. Who am I? You will find that your nature is only pure existence, pure consciousness, which is also pure bliss. The scriptures say that one should become Brahman. It does not mean that we should transform our nature from one thing to another. That is not possible. All that is meant is the abandonment of misidentification. So that your identity shifts, as it were, from the embodied individual, which is thoroughly an illusion, to the reality. I say, as it were, in terms of the shifting, because your existence is always that. If the one who is ignorant inquires into his own nature, there will be found to be existing no such thing as an ignorant one. Just the one who is knowledge. Not who has knowledge, but the one who is knowledge. For in self-knowledge, being and knowledge are identical. It is not possible to know the self as this. Who would be knowing what? But if you inquire, and inquiry is transcendent of the senses and transcendent of the mind, if you inquire to know who you are, then, as the Maharshi has stated, the inquirer is himself the answer, and there is no other answer. Wise sages say that we should wake up from the stream of samsara. It is right advice, it is holy advice. But who is it that dreams in samsara? Dreams of the samsara, and then dreams that he is in the samsara. And who are you? As long as the idea of existing as an individual entity persists, there will be seemingly endless waves of limited experience or samsara, waves of illusion. If you know yourself as you truly are, the illusion has not yet started, nor will it. The samsara is rootless. It did not develop. There is no one who dreams, who sleeps, or who wakes. No one born and no one perishing. Just one solitary being. Eternal and infinite. Exists. And you are that. Therefore, realize the bliss by being utterly detached, knowing the real abiding place of bliss as yourself. Realize knowledge by knowing yourself as consciousness itself, transcendent of all that is perceived and conceived. Realize being in utter identity with it, that leaves no possibility of the trace of illusion.
And now we'll take a little time and meditate, inquire. So first, breathe in and breathe out. Notice the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. Take long, slow breaths. Then just notice that you exist. You exist and you don't have to think about it or sense it. You know that you exist deeper than thought or senses. Then inquire, investigate within yourself, and discriminate. Look at what comes and goes and what is always there. Are you a body? The Swami talked about all the changes that happen to a body in a lifetime. He also talked about what does not change. What within you does not change. Are you a mind? Your mind has had ever so many thoughts. Each day there are so many thoughts. But who knows these thoughts? Does that change? Or is that knower always the same? Always knowing the changing mind. Now we talked about tendencies today. And look, are these tendencies for you, the unchanging, or for the mind that's always changing? Then finally, return to this question of identity and ask yourself, who am I if I'm not the body or not the changing mind, then who am I or what am I? All right. Now we will close with a short chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you for watching. If this satsang was of interest to you, I have more, a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on screen next. The satsangs will continue in the coming weeks with this series based on the Ramana Maharshi book, Who Am I? Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you.